Hi, this is James Zhang, and today I'm here with Brett Luskey of Fairmont Management Company. Brett, how's it going?
James, I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I appreciate you coming in and chatting today. And what I want to do was maybe kick it off, give people a little bit of your background, how you get started in the business, and then we'll jump into a couple of these questions.
Sure. So, as you said, my name is Brett Luskey with Fairmont Management Company. We're a third party multifamily and office and industrial management company, founded in 1994 and still going strong.
So, how many properties do you guys manage, and then sort of where are those properties located?
Sure. So, we manage roughly 50 properties throughout DFW, Lubbock, Corsicana. Um, Bread and butter is multifamily, but throughout the years, we've picked up a portfolio of commercial properties as well.
So most of your properties, are they sort of A, B, C? What class are you typically managing, and what size in terms of units?
Yeah, so we manage mainly C-class properties. You kind of draw a circle around the DFW marketplace, and that's where we are.
Okay.
Range anywhere from 80 units plus. Our largest properties, 360 units. Smallest properties, 55. But really, our bread and butter is 80 to 250 units.
Okay. And then, we're recording this right in the middle of April. And so a lot of people's thinking right now is, okay, how is this impact in terms of, well, number one, you can't evict anyone per the CARES Act. And then number two is, will tenants still pay you without that hammer coming down upon the tenants? So maybe talk a little bit about how collections have been in April so far, and maybe any strategies you guys have utilized to increase that.
Sure. So I actually collections have gone surprisingly well for April.
Okay.
Going into the month, I kind of had the doomsday scenario stuck in my head. Knowing that you couldn't evict in March, well, who's going to pay? Type of an attitude.
Right.
And I kind of I operate under the I'd rather look at the worst and be pleasantly surprised rather than think everything's sugar and cinnamon and be really upset about it. So quite honestly, it's been better than expected. I am worried about May at this point.
Okay.
Um, and once we started collecting and realized that our collections were going to be better in April, it was when's the economy going to be open, right? Because
Right. Sure.
as long as these restaurants are closed and these shops are closed, those are residents and they aren't getting paid, which means if you can afford April, that's great, but can you afford May and June if you need to also? And I just don't know if anybody has the question. I do. One of the things that I think that our team has done very well is that our managers have been on the phone even more so this past month, speaking to the residents than they were, the previous, you know, 8 years. To
Okay.
call it what it is, it was
Yeah.
just I don't want to call it easy, but the Dallas market was just booming. People were collecting. I mean, from a buy side, you bought, everything went up. Well, it's really easy to manage also whenever everything just kind of continues to go up, right?
Sure.
People come in, they pay their rent. And what we have found is that, I mean, our managers have done an amazing job speaking to residents, figuring out who can't pay, who can pay, watching when the stimulus funds are coming into accounts, and just being upfront with people, letting them know that not only is their money doesn't just go into the owner's pockets,
Sure.
their money turns around and helps us keep up with the place that they live in.
Right.
So that's really been huge for us as far as our April collections.
How has I mean, the communication with the tenants, what are tenants telling your staff? Anything surprising, or like if somebody has been impacted, let's say with a job loss or something like that, are you documenting that? Are you guys doing anything different than you have in the past to sort of track that type of stuff? And then are you putting them on payment plans, or how are you working through that without the eviction process available?
So we are doing all of that, what you said.
Okay.
Earlier this month, TAA has, you know, passed out forms and stuff of that nature, and we followed those along just because, I mean, it's Texas Apartment Association. We don't need to create the will.
Right. Sure.
Want to drive it. So we've been following those along. And look, we've had a few residents that have came in and said, I've lost my job. I need to work out payment plans. But we also understand that we have quite a few residents that just aren't going to pay.
Okay.
And as much as you can sit there and say, hey, come in and sign a payment plan, they're going to sit there and nod their head and say, okay, and not come in or just not answer their phone. And I mean, that's kind of normal course of business for us. But
How do you deal with
along with
those tenants?
as
Is
best as
it
you can. I mean, look, along with, for the tenants that come in and tell us they can't pay, we have done a good job earmarking websites and
okay?
places that they can go, not only to receive rental help. United Way is a good one. There's, Dallas area specific, rental places, Lubbock that help, but we've also done a good job earmarking which companies are currently hiring.
Sure. Yeah.
At least giving them a reference list. And quite honestly, it's not just a reference list, but it's a list that includes the exact link that you go to apply for the job.
Okay.
So we're just trying to help these people. And look, instead of taking a hard line with evictions and saying you either pay all or we're going to evict, it's a little bit more of a negotiation. Whereas somebody can pay you $250 today, well, you take it because that's a lot more than zero.
Right. I mean, sort of sitting here in the middle of April, do you have like a ballpark sort of collections, maybe month over month or year over year, sort of roughly sort of where you guys are trending?
Yeah, we're kind of on point right now.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Throughout the most of our properties. I mean, look, it's going to be a lot more telling end of April
Okay.
rather than first week to first week and a half of April. And I mean, right now we're on the halfway mark of April, which
Okay.
gives you a pretty good tell. But our feel is always the first 70 to 80% of rent
Mm-hmm.
collection is always a lot easier to collect than the last 20 to 30%.
Okay. I got that. Yeah. Okay.
And I just think that, through the surveys that I've seen, I knew Grace still did one, probably the first week of April. And just through what I've been following, I think everybody should be between the 75 to 85 to 88% in rental collections right now. And like I said,
Okay.
that's the last
That
25.
last 10 to 25% is a big number though.
It's a big number, man. And that's
Right.
the number but at this point in the month, I feel like that's usually the number that plus or minus a little bit, you're still working to collect. And
Okay.
those are the funds that have come in,
Right.
be it with like late fees and stuff like that. But those are the funds that you expect to come in, and now you're hoping they come in.
What are owners maybe calling you guys about? What questions do owners typically have for you guys right now? Like, what are they calling you about, and what are they worried about?
Collections and delinquency.
Okay. Okay. And then how do
They're
you talk them through where you're at in the cycle and anything additional that we haven't covered?
Yeah. So one of the things that we pride ourselves on, Fairmont as a whole, is we don't make the news, we report the news.
Okay.
Um, and we aren't going to lie to you either. We're going to tell you the honest truth. So look, we're getting a whole lot more questions about collections and delinquency. And we don't sugarcoat anything. We sit there and say, this is where we are. This is what we expect to collect. And here's our updated delinquency reports that are updated daily by the managers that we can tell you. And look, at a few of my properties, I have a whole lot of PTPs on, which is promised to pays on April 15th,
Okay.
which is great. But until you collect the money, you don't have it.
Right. Okay.
So if these owners know that, there's a list of 10 people with promise to pays on it and we only collect from 6 of them, we aren't going to sugarcoat it and tell them we collected all 10. We're going to tell them that we collected 6, but we've talked to the other 4, and now this is when we expect to collect them. Because look, it's an investment property. But from an ownership perspective, you hired us to treat your property in a way that you need it to be treated. So you need to know the whole truth.
Right. So yeah, so a little this month definitely a little challenge on the collection side, which is what everyone expected. But then, I guess, what are you guys doing maybe on the expense side of the equation, and then maybe staffing of some of these properties just with all these changes?
Sure. So I'll start with the staffing side because I do think it's important. We are running a more lean crew. A
Okay.
lot of our offices consist of one manager, anyways. So that manager is still going in daily, but we do have them going in. They have the set hours that they're supposed to be in the office, but they're operating with the doors locked just because we're trying to keep everybody healthy, not just
Sure.
residents,
Yeah.
but our staff also. Our maintenance staff, they're doing necessary repairs. But whenever they aren't doing necessary repairs, we're having them do make readies because that's a vacant unit that they can work in.
Okay.
We aren't having our maintenance team work two at a time. They're working in, each person's working in isolation just to, again, keep everybody safe. But one of the things that I am most proud of is we haven't made any staff cuts or asked anybody to take major hit or take any hits, quite honestly, from a payroll perspective.
Okay.
Um, because look, at this at a time of trial is whenever you build your loyalty the most.
Okay.
In our general feel for the multifamily business is as great of processes and procedures as you have. It's all about HR, man. If you have a
Okay.
rock star manager at a property, um, your property's doing better. And if you have a rough manager, no
Sure.
matter what you have going on, your property is going to be rough. And we feel like we have a very good staff right now. Um, and look, I don't know when market's going to turn around. I don't think anybody does. And if it happens in 3 weeks, I don't want somebody bouncing around because I tried to take 4 hours away from them on a weekly basis.
Sure.
To me,
Yeah.
that's being very short-sighted with where we are now. If this continues for another 3-4 months, sure, it's a different story. But at this point, um, from a maintenance and manager team perspective, that's how we're handling it.
Okay.
Then look, from an operations standpoint, right now we are fixing mainly necessary repairs.
Okay.
Um, so you're cutting your expenses on, just some of
All
the
right. Yeah.
other
Sure.
immediate repairs that
Okay.
or the other repairs that you're doing. And look, we're constantly watching, phone bills, internet bills to make sure nothing just kind of gradually creeps up, trash bills, etc. That stuff's important that, in the day-to-day grind, and everything's kind of going up, you just sit there and keep rolling through it. But it's very important to just consistently look at bills and make sure that you're being billed for the correct amount.
Yeah, I mean, one point that someone brought up in this conference I was at this past week was everyone's at home,
Right.
and electric bills, gas bills, water bills are going to be higher.
Sure.
Do you run any all bills properties, or most of your properties sort of rub back on utilities?
No, we run all bills paid properties.
Okay. Anything different on those properties that you guys are doing right now besides just trying to limit that usage? Or
How do you limit it? I mean,
yeah,
I
everyone's
can't
at
go
home.
into your
Yeah.
apartment and tell you what it's going to be. I mean, look, luckily April's been fantastic weather-wise. We had this past weekend was 80 degrees, but other than that, it's been 60 degrees for the past
Okay. So
15
luckily it wasn't
days.
July, right?
I mean, I hope we don't get to that point, man, but
Yeah.
it very well could.
Okay. I guess has there been any sort of shifts or changes that you guys have made that you think, going forward, like if they turn the lights back on May 1st for the whole country, is there any shifts that you guys or changes that you've made on operationally that you see sort of moving forward you're going to implement and keep on these properties?
Yes. I mean, look, we're going to consistently be more technologically based.
Okay.
We have some properties that we've managed for 30 years at this point that, just kind of are what they are and they chug along and they do a fantastic job. But those are also the properties that we need to concentrate on and sit there and make sure that everybody can always pay rent online
Right.
or, make sure that email addresses are updated. And like I said, a rising tide, rises all.
Right.
you don't always have to concentrate on that stuff during the big times, but it's definitely important to concentrate on now.
I guess is there I mean what have you seen? I guess it's sort of I think month one of this sort of downturn that we're about to enter. Um what do you see maybe like some of your best investors doing, or are they changing anything right now, or how are they preparing for this, the upcoming, let's say 9 to 12 months?
Sure. Keep your eye on the big prize.
Okay.
Uh, as simplistic as that sounds, man. I mean, we're like
So
I said,
maybe expand on that a little bit.
yeah. So you have a goal. Your goal is to make sure your property is more valuable, or your goal is to continue the cash flow of your property,
Sure.
right? Um, that is still your goal today.
Okay.
That your goal didn't change just because the market dipped. Look, the ultimate goal right now, I think, is to preserve cash, so that you can pay your mortgage without having to push it on the back end, because I think that's kind of a poison pill right now. So
Okay.
unless if you have to do it, of course.
Well, there's
But
no pushing it on the back end. Actually, the Fannie and Freddie are going to make you pay it within 12 months.
okay, I mean, so to me, those are, but like whenever you're doing that, I don't believe that you can evict people.
Yeah. When you're in forbearance, you can't evict. They're
So it's
letting you evict. Fannie changed their rule, but they're letting you evict even if you have paid back that money
uh,
currently. So it's just during that first. It's basically from April 1st, and then
sure.
120 days from there. So
Okay.
yeah,
So again, concentrate on, like I said, your goals haven't changed. It's always that, shoot for the moon and see where you land type of a thing, right? But just because the rocket has a little bit of engine trouble doesn't mean you aren't shooting for the same spot.
sure.
And again, that's overly simplistic, but I think that it's really important to remember, and also to remember that, look, you do have a good team in place. You hired the management company for a reason. Um, let them continue to do their job. Just because there's this tight market, yeah, it's okay to get your hands a little bit more dirty, but you start micromanaging everything, you're just gonna make things less efficient.
What would you say? So we'll step back from COVID for a little bit here. What
Sure.
would you say is different about sort of there's three, four, five, six management companies here in DFW. What do you think sort of separates you guys from some of the other management companies in the area?
Sure. My usual talking point was we've gone through a downturn before, because world, but I guess now everybody's going through a downturn, so I
Sure.
have to change my pitch line. Um, but look, we have about 4,000 units under management, been up to about 8,000. So we know how it is to be a larger company. Currently, just through transactions and by personal choice, we're at where we are. So we give you the time that you need, and I don't just give you to an asset manager. Mike Kotwitz, my partner, and we interface with our clients on a daily basis. We know what's going on at the properties, and I do feel like that's important. Our policies and procedures are in place to where we run a very efficient complex. But whenever you have a question, you have our cell phones. You can shoot us a text, email, however, and get a hold of us.
So are you guys essentially the regionals, or do you have regionals?
We have regional
You have
managers.
regionals, okay. But then people are able, you and Mike sort of run, if there's any issues that you guys need to track down, you guys can do that.
Absolutely. We're happy to get our hands dirty.
Okay. I guess before this whole COVID thing, is there any sort of maybe big wins that you had in the last 12 months that you would want to share?
Big wins, personally or business wise, James.
Either one. Either one.
I mean, this COVID thing has been huge, man. Like we said beforehand, my son knows how to ride a two-wheeler now, and he's 4.
Yeah.
My 2-year-old in 20 years might not like me telling you this, but she is potty trained because my wife and I are both home, and it's easier to do that. Um,
Definitely.
And look, we have made strategic growth. So we have been able to add regional managers to our portfolio. And to this point, and we don't have any plans to, our staff has stayed the same through
Okay.
this outbreak. And look, as I said earlier, that's, to me, that's a point of pride.
Sure.
And while it's, I don't even think it's hard to justify. Um, if we make it through this outbreak and we don't let anybody to go, that will be my greatest achievement of the past 12 months. Because you read about all these people, going through unemployment and
Sure.
whatnot, and companies laying them off and furloughing and stuff. And I just I think that's awesome if we can do it.
Right. Right. All right. In terms of maybe any books, any favorite books or books that have influenced you the most in the last maybe couple years?
Yeah. So one that's a classic that I know it's big through the real estate industry is Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna read that one once every 6 months to a year just to kind of refresh it. And then also, reading the Torah is big.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to say that's overly simplistic, but right now you kind of read it, and each each weekly portion, while it's different, there's so many parallels to what you're going through on a weekly basis that it's very interesting. And I've never really done that. I've kind of done it a little bit more lately,
Sure.
but it's fun to see it and say, well, you slaughtered a goat and you weren't able to do this or that, and it's kind of well, we can't leave our house right now either, so you have direct parallels.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of times you have to step back and think about you're going to get through this. People have been through tough times before, and this is just it's just a little bit darker weather, bigger storm right now that we're having to deal with. Um, you know, what is maybe just wrap with this is what's sort of your biggest piece of advice maybe that you give, but few people follow out there, and for the multifamily investors out there?
Sure. Have a big picture goal and stick to it. If it cost me $20 more to order a set of supplies for a make ready unit rather than ordering from 4 different companies, and I get my supplies the next day and I get the unit made ready in 5 quicker days,
Yeah.
we saved a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's again, have your big picture goals, know what they are, um, and keep moving towards them. Don't get stuck in the weeds.
Perfect. Brett, what's the best way for people to reach out to you if they have any other questions or want to reach out?
Sure. My direct number is 972-284-1045. My email address is a little bit long, but it's bluskey, Luskey, at fairmontmanagement.com.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Brett.
James, have a good day, man.
All right. See ya.